The armory at Fort Benning's Weapons Training Battalion was a sacred place. Rows upon rows of meticulously maintained firearms lined the reinforced walls, each one cleaned, oiled, and stored with religious precision. For the soldiers who trained there, these weapons weren't just tools, they were lifelines, the difference between coming home or not. Master Sergeant Frank Donovan had run this armory for 15 years with an iron fist and an eagle eye. Nothing escaped his notice, not a speck of carbon buildup, not a hairline scratch on a barrel, not a spring with a fraction less tension than regulation demanded. His reputation was legendary across the base. Cross Donovan, and you'd be cleaning weapons until your fingers bled. So when word came down that he was retiring and his replacement would be Specialist Alexis Turner, a 32-year-old with auburn hair and barely 4 years of service, the reaction throughout the battalion ranged from disbelief to outright mockery. Which city are you watching from? Share it in the comments. Maybe someone else from your city is here too. And remember, if you believe heroes appear in the most unexpected ways, hit subscribe and give this video a like. This has to be some kind of joke, Staff Sergeant Miller said, reading the personnel announcement on the bulletin board. Specialist? Running the battalion armory? And Turner of all people? The other NCOs gathered around nodded in agreement. Everyone knew Specialist Turner. She'd transferred to Fort Benning 6 months ago and had made an impression, but not a good one. Despite her technical role as a weapons maintenance specialist, she seemed perpetually uncomfortable around firearms. Her hands shook during inspections. She mixed up parts during cleaning. She'd even failed her own weapons qualification twice before barely passing on her third attempt. I heard she dropped an M4 during the colonel's inspection last month, Sergeant Rodriguez added. Donovan nearly had an aneurysm. Maybe it's temporary, another NCO suggested, until they find someone qualified. But it wasn't temporary. The following Monday, Specialist Alexis Turner reported for duty as the new battalion armorer. Her uniform pressed, but her expression anxious as Master Sergeant Donovan prepared to hand over his domain. Specialist, Donovan said, his voice carrying the weight of 15 years of authority, this armory contains over 2,000 individual weapons, from sidearms to crew served. Each one is maintained to the highest standard. Each one could save a soldier's life, or take it, if improperly maintained. Turner nodded, her eyes darting around the vast room as if overwhelmed by the responsibility. Yes, Master Sergeant. I've prepared an inventory checklist and maintenance schedule, Donovan continued, handing her a thick binder. Every weapon, every part, every tool has its place. Nothing, and I mean nothing, moves without proper documentation. Understood, Master Sergeant, Turner replied, taking the binder with hands that visibly trembled. Donovan's eyes narrowed. Are you nervous, Specialist? Just want to do a good job, Master Sergeant. Donovan studied her for a long moment. Your file says you were a weapons maintenance specialist at Fort Hood before transferring here. Yet in the 6 months you've been at Benning, I've never seen someone so uncomfortable handling firearms. Care to explain that? Turner's gaze dropped to the floor. I'm still adjusting, Master Sergeant. New systems, new protocols. These aren't new systems. Specialist. An M4 is an M4. An M9 is an M9. These are basic weapons platforms that haven't fundamentally changed in decades. Yes, Master Sergeant, I'll do better. Donovan sighed heavily. See that you do, because if you don't, it won't be me you answer to anymore. It'll be the first soldier who dies because his weapon malfunctioned under your watch. With those ominous words hanging in the air, Master Sergeant Donovan conducted his final inspection, turned over his keys, and walked out of the armory he had ruled for 15 years, leaving behind a visibly shaken Specialist Turner. The transition went exactly as poorly as everyone had predicted. Within the first week, Turner had mixed up serial numbers on 3 different weapons, misplaced a box of cleaning kits, and incorrectly assembled an M240 machine gun during a routine maintenance check. The battalion's NCOs were growing increasingly concerned, and rumors circulated that the commanding officer was already looking for a replacement. The situation came to a head during the monthly weapons inspection by Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, the battalion commander. As was tradition, the armorer was expected to demonstrate proper maintenance procedures on selected weapons. Turner was asked to break down and reassemble an M4 carbine, a basic task that any qualified armorer should be able to perform blindfolded. She fumbled from the start. Her hands shook as she attempted to separate the upper and lower receivers. She dropped the bolt carrier group, sending it clattering across the table. When she finally managed to disassemble the weapon, she struggled to put it back together, inserting the firing pin retaining pin incorrectly and failing to properly seat the buffer spring. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes watched with growing concern. "Specialist Turner, are you feeling unwell today?" "No, sir," she replied, her face flushed with embarrassment. I'm sorry, sir." "Perhaps you could explain the proper function of the forward assist," the colonel suggested, offering her a chance to redeem herself with a simple technical question. Turner stared at the component as if seeing it for the first time. It helps with feeding issues, sir." Not entirely wrong, but far from the precise answer expected from a battalion armorer. The forward assist was designed to manually push the bolt carrier forward if it failed to seat properly, a basic piece of knowledge for anyone working with these weapons. The colonel's expression darkened. "I'd like to see you in my office at 1400 hours, Specialist. Staff Sergeant Miller, please take over this inspection." As Turner stepped back, her face burning with shame, the assembled NCOs exchanged glances. This was worse than they'd expected. This wasn't just incompetence, it was dangerous. What no one in that room knew was that Specialist Alexis Turner was hiding something that would turn their perception of her upside down within 24 hours. The next morning dawned with a crisis. A squad from Alpha Company was preparing for a live-fire exercise when 3 of their M4s malfunctioned during pre-fire checks. The squad leader immediately reported the issue and brought the weapons to the armory for emergency inspection. Turner was alone when they arrived, Sergeant Miller having been called away to a meeting. The squad leader, Sergeant Davis, barely concealed his dismay at finding Turner on duty. "With all due respect, Specialist, I'd rather wait for Staff Sergeant Miller to return," he said bluntly. "We need these weapons operational in 2 hours." Something shifted in Turner's expression, a hardening, a focus that hadn't been there before. "What exactly is the malfunction, Sergeant?" "Failure to extract on all 3. They were fine yesterday." Turner nodded. "Let me see them." Reluctantly, Davis handed over the weapons. To his surprise, Turner's hands were suddenly steady as she took the first rifle. Without hesitation, she dropped the magazine, cleared the chamber, and locked the bolt to the rear with practiced efficiency. Her movements were fluid, confident, nothing like the fumbling specialist they'd all come to know. She examined the extractor with expert precision, then reached for a small tool from her workbench. "Your extractors have been tampered with," she said, her voice different now, authoritative, certain. Someone filed down the extractor clause. This wasn't an accident or a maintenance issue. Davis blinked in surprise. "Are you sure?" "Positive," Turner replied, already moving to the second rifle. "Same here, and I'd bet my stripes the third one matches." This was deliberate sabotage. She worked quickly, replacing the damaged parts with new ones from a secure cabinet, her movements so precise and practiced that Davis found himself staring in confusion. This was not the same woman who had fumbled basic weapon assembly just yesterday. "That should do it," she said, handing the weapons back after function checking each one. "But I want to know who had access to these weapons between yesterday's training and this morning." I'll find out," Davis stammered, still trying to process the transformation he was witnessing. "Do that, and bring me a list of everyone who had access to the armory in the last 48 hours, Turner added, her tone making it clear this wasn't a request. As Davis left with his now functional weapons, he nearly collided with Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, who was entering the armory with a folder in his hand. "Sir," Davis saluted quickly, "Specialist Turner just fixed our weapons. Someone tampered with the extractors." The colonel's eyebrows rose. "Tampered?" "Yes, sir. She spotted it right away, said it was deliberate sabotage." Hayes looked past Davis to where Turner stood at her workbench, her posture now straight and confident, completely different from the nervous specialist who had failed his inspection. "Thank you, Sergeant. Carry on with your exercise. I need to speak with Specialist Turner." As Davis departed, Hayes approached the workbench. Turner came to attention and saluted crisply, a far cry from her usual uncertain movements. "At ease, Specialist. Or, should I say, Captain." Turner's expression didn't change, but her eyes narrowed slightly. "Sir?" Hayes placed the folder on the workbench. "This came in from SOCOM headquarters this morning. Apparently my inquiry about your unusual performance triggered some interesting protocols." Turner glanced at the folder but didn't open it. "I'm not sure what you mean, sir." "I think you do," Hayes replied. Captain Alexis Turner, Special Operations Command Armaments Development Group, one of the military's top weapons designers and ballistics experts, on loan to SOCOM for the past 8 years. Specialized in identifying and countering enemy weapons modifications in theater, inventor of the modified extractor system now used in all Special Operations M4 variants. For a long moment, Turner said nothing. Then she sighed, her posture shifting subtly into that of a senior officer rather than a junior enlisted. "How much do you know, sir?" "Only what's in that folder, which isn't much. But it's enough to know you're not a struggling specialist who can't tell a forward assist from a dust cover. What I don't know is why one of SOCOM's top weapons experts is pretending to be incompetent in my battalion armory." Turner glanced around, ensuring they were alone. "I'm here under orders, sir. We've had reports of weapons tampering at multiple training installations over the past year. Subtle modifications that wouldn't be caught in standard inspections, but could cause catastrophic failures in combat conditions." "Like filed-down extractors," Hayes said, understanding dawning. "Exactly. The pattern suggested an organized effort, possibly aimed at compromising weapons before they're shipped to forward operating bases. Fort Benning was identified as a potential target due to the high volume of weapons that pass through here for training purposes." "And your cover as an incompetent armorer." Turner smiled slightly. "People are careless around those they don't respect, sir. If someone is tampering with weapons, they wouldn't do it if they thought the armorer would catch it. My apparent incompetence was meant to draw them out." "And it worked," Hayes said, nodding toward the weapons Turner had just fixed. "Yes, sir. Those modifications were recent, within the last 12 hours, and they match the pattern we've seen at other installations." Hayes considered this information. "Why wasn't I briefed on this operation?" "Compartmentalization, sir. The fewer people who knew, the better chance we had of catching whoever is behind this. Even your inquiry about my performance was anticipated. That's why SOCOM had that file ready to send when you asked questions." "So what happens now, Captain?" "Now we set a trap," Turner replied, her eyes hardening with determination, "and we catch whoever is trying to get American soldiers killed." The plan came together quickly. With Colonel Hayes now aware of her true identity, Captain Turner could operate more freely. They decided to use her cover as a struggling armorer to their advantage, staging a very public dressing down, where Hayes would threaten to replace her, but give her one more chance to prove herself. "Word will spread that I'll be away from the armory tomorrow evening for remedial training," Turner explained as they finalized the details. "That should give our saboteur an opportunity to access the weapons scheduled for next week's deployment training." "And you'll be waiting," Hayes concluded. "With a surveillance team from CID, Turner confirmed, referring to the Army's Criminal Investigation Division. "We've been working with them since this investigation began." The following day, Hayes berated Turner in the battalion headquarters, loud enough for his voice to carry through the open door to the staff working outside. He emphasized that she would be required to attend special training sessions every evening for the next week, starting that night. By lunchtime, the news had spread throughout the battalion. The incompetent armorer was getting one last chance, and the armory would be minimally staffed during evening hours. At 1900 hours, Turner made a show of leaving the base with her training materials. In reality, she circled back through a secondary entrance, changed into tactical gear, and joined the CID team already in position near the armory. "Surveillance is up and running," the CID team leader, Agent Ramirez, informed her. "We have cameras on all access points and motion sensors inside." Turner nodded, checking the tablet that showed the camera feeds. "How many weapons are in the preparation area?" 24 M4s, scheduled for function testing tomorrow before being issued to the deployment training group." "Perfect target," Turner murmured. "If someone wanted to compromise weapons bound for a combat zone, that's where they'd start." They didn't have to wait long. At 20:43 hours, the motion sensors triggered. A figure in maintenance coveralls entered the armory using an access card. "That's Staff Sergeant Wilson," Turner said, recognizing the battalion's assistant operations NCO. "He shouldn't have armory access after hours." They watched as Wilson moved directly to the preparation area, removed tools from his pocket, and began working on the weapons with practiced efficiency. "He's replacing the extractors," Turner observed. "Same modification we found yesterday." "That's enough for me," Agent Ramirez said, signaling his team. "Let's move." The takedown was swift and professional. Wilson was so focused on his task that he didn't notice the CID team until they were already inside the armory. He attempted to flee, but was quickly subdued. As the agents secured Wilson, Turner approached and removed her tactical cap, revealing her face. Wilson's eyes widened in recognition, and then understanding. You're not really a screw-up, are you?" he asked, his voice bitter with realization. "Captain Alexis Turner, SOCOM Armaments Development Group," she replied coolly. "And no, I'm not a screw-up, but you are. Did you really think no one would notice weapons failing in combat zones?" "You don't understand," Wilson spat. "Those weapons were never supposed to reach combat. They were for training only. Tell that to the 3 soldiers who died in Afghanistan last month when their extractors failed during a firefight," Turner replied, her voice hard. "The weapons you tampered with at Fort Hood made it to the 10th Mountain Division despite your training-only intentions." Wilson's face paled. "That wasn't supposed to happen." "Who are you working for?" Turner demanded. "This isn't a one-man operation." Wilson's eyes darted around, looking for escape. Finding none, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "There's a group, ex-military mostly. They believe the war is wrong, that if enough equipment malfunctions, they can force a withdrawal of troops. They recruited me last year." "Sabotaging weapons doesn't end wars," Turner said coldly. "It just gets good soldiers killed. And now you're going to tell us everything about this group." As CID led Wilson away, Colonel Hayes approached Turner. "Good work, Captain. How long have you been tracking this group?" "Almost a year," she replied. "Wilson is the 4th arrest, but based on the pattern of tampering, we believe there are at least 3 more operatives at other installations. Will you be moving on to find them?" Turner nodded. "As soon as I brief my team on what we learned here, my cover at Fort Benning is obviously blown, but the operation continues." The next morning, the battalion was abuzz with the news. Staff Sergeant Wilson's arrest for sabotage was shocking enough, but the revelation that the seemingly incompetent Specialist Turner was actually a highly decorated SOCOM captain and weapons expert left everyone reeling. As Turner packed her few belongings in the armory office, now dressed in her proper uniform with captain's bars, there was a knock at the door. "Enter," she called. Staff Sergeant Miller stepped in, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "Captain, I just wanted to say, well, we all misjudged you. I apologize for how we treated you." Turner smiled. "No apology necessary, Staff Sergeant. You reacted exactly as you should have to an apparently incompetent armorer. That was the point." "Still feels wrong, ma'am. Some of the things we said were exactly what I needed everyone to believe," Turner assured him. "Your skepticism helped sell my cover." Miller nodded, still looking sheepish. "If you don't mind me asking, ma'am, how hard was it? Pretending to be bad at something you're obviously an expert in?" Turner considered the question. "Harder than you might think. It's against our nature as soldiers to perform poorly on purpose. Every time I fumbled a weapon assembly or failed an inspection, it went against everything I've trained for. Worth it though, right? Catching Wilson before more weapons could be tampered with?" "Absolutely," Turner replied without hesitation. "That's the job, whatever it takes to keep our soldiers safe." As she prepared to leave Fort Benning, Turner was surprised to find the battalion formed up outside headquarters. Colonel Hayes stood at the front. "Battalion, attention!" he called as Turner approached. The soldiers snapped to attention in perfect unison. "Captain Turner," Hayes said formally, "on behalf of the Weapons Training Battalion, I want to thank you for your service here. Your dedication and sacrifice protected countless soldiers who will never know how close they came to receiving compromised weapons." Turner, uncomfortable with the recognition, nodded acknowledgement. "Just doing my job, sir." "Sometimes the most important jobs are the ones no one knows about," Hayes replied. "Battalion, present arms." As the soldiers saluted, Turner felt a complex mix of emotions. For months, these same soldiers had dismissed her, mocked her, even pitied her. Now they were saluting her with newfound respect. It was a powerful reminder of how quickly perceptions could change. She returned the salute crisply, then made her way to the waiting vehicle that would take her to her next assignment. Another base, another cover identity, another mission to keep soldiers safe from threats they'd never see coming. As the car pulled away, Turner allowed herself a small smile. Her former instructor at SOCOM had been right. Sometimes the best way to be exceptional is to appear completely unremarkable. It was a lesson she had learned well, and one that had saved lives. In her pocket was a small token, a spent shell casing from the first weapon she had ever designed. now carried as a reminder of why she did this work. Not for recognition or glory, but for the soldiers who depended on their weapons to bring them home alive. The next base was waiting, and with it, another saboteur to catch. Captain Alexis Turner, the weapons expert who had perfected the art of appearing incompetent, was ready for her next mission.